Yeah, real life. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Business Tech Talks. And today we have a really special guest, Natalia, joining us. Welcome back, Natalia.
Thank you, Santosh. I'm very happy to be here again. I think this is my third time with you, and I always enjoy it very much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So today we are going to talk about front-end architect role. So a few weeks ago, someone actually on Twitter asked me what is front-end architect role and how to grow into it. So I couldn't find anyone better than Natalia to join us and then talk about this particular role. So here we are. So we'll be talking about front-end architect role. And in case you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So Natalia, before we go ahead, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, okay. I'm Natalia. I've been working in development for a very long time, too long maybe. And I think for the past 5 years, I've been in the role of architect. Initially together with my tech lead role, so I was in a very hands-on role, still working as a developer in parallel. And for the past 6 months, I'm working as a solutions architect exclusively at MongoDB.
Okay. So, Natalia, I want to ask you how you actually transitioned into front-end role, right? So, how was your journey?
You mean as a front-end developer or front-end architect?
I don't know how you went into front-end architect. So, how you started your journey,
Architect,
then
yeah.
ended up into.
Yeah, well, I was working as a front-end tech lead for a very, very large project, a very large account. And so we got this platform, and one of their platforms, right, that was being handled by a different consultant. And we were diving in, and we realized there was a lot to, let's say, improve. So at some point, we decided we were not going to continue to work and like develop features on top of this architecture because it was outdated, it was bloated, and there was too much work ahead of us to stabilize it. So we decided we were going to migrate to completely new technologies, and we were going to build it from scratch, basically. And at that time, I had a talk with other leads in the team, and even the CTO. He was very involved in this account, or with this account, and we decided we needed to do some new architecture definitions. And I told him, the front end part, the front end volume, it's going to increase a lot, and you are going to need expert people that think from an architecture perspective in order to get this right. And this is how I grew organically into this role. I went to my first architecture workshop. We made some decisions. I learned how to discover more, how to scope, how to make these assumptions that in the end need to be demonstrated, and then obviously, help the team with estimations and everything that pertains more to architecture decisions than it does to actual coding or development. And this is how I started transitioning, and then I started taking on other tasks that typically solutions architects do. We typically support with new customers, which we support with requests for proposals, which are some documents that we deliver to customers when we want to get their accounts, when we want to start working with them, supporting in different calls with different customers to help them decide on their front-end architecture and evaluate also their current implementation, what could improve. And this is how I more or less started working effectively as a solutions architect and moved definitively to this role.
So, you basically convinced your organization to actually have an architect, and then you went in to become the one yourself, right?
Yes, I had
That's
many
nice.
conversations. I had many conversations on this. with people at the organization I was working for that there was a need for front-end architects, and that what I wanted was for architects with a front-end focus or with a front-end expertise to be part of early conversations with the customers. Because what I realized is that many times or oftentimes we had architects with more of an infrastructure, systems, or backend background, making assumptions on front-end technologies that ended up being completely wrong. And it was not their fault. They were just not experienced with front-end technologies. And as front-end technologies evolved a lot over the past years and they became radically more complex, we needed people that came from a front-end background to really understand how to deliver a good solution and how to design a good solution, how to make decisions that made sense for the front end. And I think that everybody agreed that that was necessary. So yes, basically.
Okay, so just to ask, I mean, were there any incidents which happened and you thought that, okay, this we really need and so some front-end architect here? Any real-time examples which you can give, which you faced actually?
You mean at a technical level, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. The thing is that when you move to an architecture role, the first thing that people need to understand is that the perspective completely changes. So when you become an architect, it's not only about technology. And what I always say is, when you are an architect, you don't make your decisions based off technology only. Technology obviously plays a big role, but people play the greatest role. So you have to, people in business, obviously. So you have to make decisions that make sense for the business and that make sense for the people. And what I mean by that is, for example, as a front-end architect, when you are faced with the problem of what is the best framework for this or solve this particular problem, you have to think of your team, first of all. What is my team savvy on? What kind of knowledge they have? What is going to be the ramp-up time for my team to learn this new technology if we choose it? What are the constraints? What is the deadline? And then, based upon all these decisions, how much money this will cost for the customer, that's also very important for architects. Once you have answered all those questions, then is when you finally make a decision. So I don't think, like, there are many concrete examples I could give you, but I think what is very important to understand is that the most important problems we solve as architects usually are not only technically connected to, or are not only technical, are a variety of things that we need to think of when we make those decisions. And that's what's challenging, right? Connecting all the dots and making sure that you're not biased, that you're not only thinking about your own preferences or your team preferences. You're taking them into account, but also obviously the needs of the customer and their business model and how everything works well together.
So just to ask you, like, how like day-to-day work of yours looks like as a solution architect or as a front-end architect?
It was very different in my previous organization because, like I said, I was very hands-on there. So usually what it looked like there, it's not what it looks like today, but I can give you examples of both. Back in the day, usually we had to obviously meet with the customer. The first thing you always want to do as an architect is to discover what is the problem they have. That you have to design a solution for, because that's why the role is called solutions architect, right? You are just using your knowledge, your experience to create a solution, to design a solution for them. But obviously you need to understand very well the problem. And so there are a lot of conversations with the customer. Obviously, if there is existing infrastructure, existing implementations, you need to understand them very well. You also, like I said, need to understand the teams you're going to be working with, what are their skills, how they are configured, and then you can decide how to get the most out of everything as a whole, right? And so yes, you have a lot of meetings with the customer. You have a lot of documentation to write. So you write a lot of documentation based off your assumptions, your discovery. You do scoping, you do estimations, you plan for the future. You help project managers design a roadmap. You help them prioritize tasks, and you make again a lot of technical decisions in terms of what, I don't know, other technologies, third parties, or whatever you're going to be connecting to. You have to also think about licensing, about legal constraints, about sovereignty, about data. There is a lot of dots to connect. I did a while ago a diagram of everything that should be in the scope of a front-end architect. I'm going to repost it in Twitter because it was pretty popular back in the day, and I also use it a lot during my conference talks. And
I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah, and so basically, back then I used to also code a lot, and right now my role is more as an advisor. So I work with MongoDB, and I have a media of, like, I work in corporate, which is with startups, usually very data intensive applications. And what we do is we analyze their current infrastructure or what they want to do if it's a new application that they're going to launch. And we make some technical recommendations in terms of, for example, the clusters, the size, the capacity, what other pieces of the puzzle they probably need to support a certain type of architecture. For example, I don't know, if they are using an event-oriented kind of design or event-based architecture, we suggest how to connect with Kafka or with any other streaming system. And this is basically how what I do. So I have a lot of also calls with customers. Then I do a lot of sizing and scoping, and yes, and support in this regard.
So just a question here. So if I remember, you have been involved in front end for a long time, and now you actually work for a company which is like a database solution,
Yes.
which is totally backend. So how is this transition? What you miss and what you enjoy here?
I don't think I can yet miss anything, because I continue to be very involved in development, and this is something I told my current manager when I joined. I still want to continue to do my unofficial developer relations job. And she was like, yeah, I support it at 100%. So I still do a lot of conferences, and for that I do a lot of demos. And now I'm on a mission to bring MongoDB to Spanish-speaking audiences, because I believe that probably we're missing good content that is up to date. So I'm coding a lot, right? But yes, I'm coding a lot because I miss it if I don't do it. So I think it's a great experience, and I'm learning a lot. I still want to always keep it connected to the practical side, because obviously architects work more at a high level. And And how I ended up there, I don't know. I've always been a very curious person. Like I moved, originally I was a designer, right? And then I moved to,
Yeah.
and I, even before I started architecture, so I studied architecture, then I went to being a designer, then I moved to development. I really don't believe that people should, you know, just, if they don't want, right? Because if this is what they want to do, that's fine. But if you have this wish and this, you know, curiosity, and you want to continue to learn and always explore different things, why not? And I had the chance, and I just did it. So, so
So, yeah, Vijay has this question. I mean, it's on the same line. So, how did you expand from front end to end to end? I mean, you started with your front end development, then how you actually went on to have entire knowledge of how database works, how you can connect it with front end. So, how did that happen?
studying a lot, right? But I have to say that for me, it's vital, and this is something that I have always advocated for. I feel that front-end developers, not necessarily like they don't have to do it if they don't want to. If they want to focus entirely on the UI, that's fine, because I have also lost skills. Like when I started and when I just transitioned from designer to front-end developer, I was very, very good at CSS. Like I was the best at CSS, but now I'm not, because I lost that skill, right? I have to think, I have to go to documentation, I have to do trial and error, right? I'm not that good anymore at that. But I feel that if you are working in a front-end technical role that involves API, like calling APIs, like dealing with a lot of data, with a lot of reactiveness, it's better if you understand more of what's going on under the hood. If you have a better and deeper knowledge of the setup, of the server, of the protocols, of the whole infrastructure that makes it possible that that front end exists as well, right? And so, because I always believed in that, I always tried to explore what was on the backend side as well, and on the data persistence layer, and yes, and this is how I got to where I am today.
Awesome. I mean, I started my journey with like Windows development, so I was really comfortable doing everything. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
let's see if we have any questions here. I mean, okay, we already spoke about do you get time to code? Of course, you get a lot of time to. I mean, you invest a lot of time doing that, so that's a good thing. You're still
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah, yeah. But right now I'm like coding an Angular application with MongoDB, and it's also part of my work because I am designing a workshop at work. Because part of my
Mhm.
job is also to enable customers and get closer to developers and teach them how to better use MongoDB. So, what better way to do that than with practical knowledge and showing them how to implement those connections, right? And those models, and querying the data from the front end directly or to a GraphQL API or whatever way, maybe incoming webhooks or any of the capabilities that are available in the web today over cloud infrastructures and so on.
Great. So, we spoke about like all the shiny things which you do as a front-end architect. What about challenges? There will, I'm sure, there will be challenges as well when you actually move into front-end architect role. So, what are the challenges you face, or let's say if someone new comes into the front-end architect role, what are the challenges they will face probably? So, can you tell us a little bit?
I think that there is the challenge of, unfortunately, some people still don't feel that front end experts. I don't want to say are not real engineers, because I really don't want to get in that debate, but there's still some improvement to do for some people to accept that front end plays a much larger role, particularly on top of the architectures that are more popular today, basically cloud-based or cloud native. And so we have to sometimes work against that that barrier, let's say, imposed by people that are not yet ready to accept the fact that maybe backend technologies are going to also evolve into a different thing, and that probably there's going to be an equal volume at some point of backend business logic and front end. And
I know.
Yeah, so that's one of the challenges, and the other one is the great amount or vast amount of things you need to know to be a good front-end architect, and be able to design good systems from one end to another, and keep in mind the good user experience, performance. SLAs for performance are every time lower and lower. Like, the users are changing, they expect everything to happen right away, which is great, but that obviously it's on the hands of a good front-end architecture, and that poses a challenge. So yes.
Yeah, and so the reason I was laughing about it, because this is the same issue which I faced few years ago. I mean, I was working with a client, and there were few Java developers, and it was same. I mean, they don't used to actually take our opinions, or they don't used to value our opinions, and that's how I ended up actually leaving that job in 6 months. So yeah, this is something which the point you raised is like, I think it's everywhere.
But I think I've been lucky, because I've always worked with people that are very open-minded, and that acts like they are visionaries, and they're seeing the change, and they are embracing it. And this is where we should go to, or what we should work for. It's not about the front end being better or the back end being better.
Yeah.
It's about us being all part of a system where we play different roles, but we need each other also, right? So we
Exactly.
need to make it. We need to make it work, and it's great when we can work in harmony and as a team, and work for an objective. So that's the goal. Right.
Yeah, right. I mean, taking a path is another thing, but at least hear the opinion, right? I mean, everyone has their opinion to share. At least listen to them, and
Yeah,
then we can
definitely.
decide.
Definitely.
So Aditya has this question: do you miss anything now that you are an architect when compared to being just a developer?
I don't know. I used to really love being in the front line, and this, like, I don't know, it's just part of my nature. I used to love the release date, and that, I don't want to say stress. I don't want to sound like an addicted to stress, but yes, as a technical lead, I had a great time leading teams and being in charge of the release, and all this, rush of, you hit the deploy button, and now it's in prod, and what's gonna happen now? And I kind of miss this now. I see it. I'm part of it, but from a different angle as an
Right.
architect, and with different teams. Every day I talk to I don't know, 5 or 6 different teams. Yeah, I miss it a bit, of course. I don't discard one day I go back to it, but who knows.
So Aditya has another question: was there any instance where you made a bad decision?
Of course, who hasn't? I mean,
That's how we learn.
people who say they never made mistakes, I don't, I cannot trust. I mean, we always make bad calls. And I think
Exactly.
when we make bad calls, is usually because we are biased, and because we are acting out of, like, we are being subjective in any way. And if you want to really succeed as an architect, Yes, thank you, Michael. You have to, yes, if you want to succeed, you have to remove yourself from your own
Okay.
preferences, let's say. Like, I love Angular, and I wish I always worked with Angular, but it may be, or it may not be, the right solution for a certain problem I'm facing. So these are the things that a good architect has to keep in mind. You have to be very, very objective. Sorry, you have to be very objective, and you have to base your decisions on facts, on data, and yeah.
And most of the time we actually make bad decisions because we are overconfident, I would say.
Yeah, that as well. Of
So
course.
always take a second opinion.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. That's the best way to go. You need to find people that challenge you, and that, yes, try not to work with people that will accept everything you say, because
Agreed.
then you will never grow. It's great when we have people that challenge us, and that, yeah, can help us see things from a different point of view.
I mean, so Aditya says, do you mind sharing any particular scenario if you want to? I mean, it's okay.
The problem I have with sharing particular scenarios is that I am on many NDAs, so I cannot share. I cannot share a lot of details, but I think the scenarios are pretty much the same. It's either you come across a problem where you would really want to test a new technology or something more innovative, but then again, if you think about it, it doesn't make sense. Like, if you start really analyzing, you think like, yeah, but the people in my team don't really know this technology. We have a deadline that is 2 months from now. Does it make sense for this particular case? Probably not. Right.
Exactly. I mean, I will share my own personal experience. Actually, one time, due to just being an overconfidence and not checking with someone else, I costed my company around 4.5 lakh rupees. I think it was more than that. But yeah, I mean, that was a lesson learned that, okay, you should not actually take a decision just by your own when, especially when it comes to money. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So Vijay has this question. Do you think any cloud certification would help front-end leads to transition to architect role?
Definitely. Go for all of the certifications you can, and specialize in cloud. I always think that, like, front-end developers, if they are inclined to, I really, really, really suggest they go for deeper knowledge on cloud infrastructures, offering, and anything related, and that they learn to build an application and deploy it from end to end.
Yeah,
Like,
agreed. So I think we are almost at the end of the session, Natalia. So last question I would like to ask you is, okay, there is one question from Apple. Let's take that, and then I'll come back to my question. So Apple says, what would you recommend a full stack developer to learn next in order to grow and become architect? Exactly, this was going to be my question. So thanks, Apple.
okay, but what do you know? You need to help me understand what's next for you. So where are you now, right? I assume you know some backend technology, you know some database technology at least, or model, and front end, right? So obviously you need to make that live, that public, that deploy it somewhere. Learn to use all the possibilities we have right now with all these systems that are interconnected, like when you have your code in GitHub and you can use actions to deploy it, and where does it go, and how to connect to different systems, because that will help you understand concepts like service mesh or API gateway, or these kind of things that are very, very necessary to, in your mind, a level diagram of full architecture. And also, I think that good exercises are when, for an architect or somebody wanting to become an architect, a migration. So pretend a migration scenario. For example, I have this application, it's getting old. How would I modernize it? What would I use? What challenges would I face? What do I need to do it? Because this is basically what an architect does. So propose yourself an exercise like this, a migration, an upgrade, and how would you solve this? What are all the things you need to make it possible? And that's already doing the job of an architect. I can, for example, I can start this. I could propose a challenge on Twitter. How would you do this? Like propose a scenario, and then people can start trying to find their way to architecture, and then I can explain how would I do it, if that helps.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I think we can actually do something like Dev Discuss, which is on Dev2. So you can post this and then come up with solution. That's a really great idea.
Excellent.
Cool. So Natalia, anything you want to promote on the channel?
No, yeah, well, version 13 of Angular is coming out soon, so stay tuned for that. That's all I want.
So it will be released soon. And I think if you're using NX DevTools, you don't have to worry about a lot of migrations. Yeah, so use NX DevTools as well.
Exactly. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks a lot, Natalia, for joining us. It was really an interactive session, as you mentioned, and a lot of questions, a lot of great questions. So thanks a lot for answering all of them. And
and I want to apologize here live if sometimes I don't find the time to answer some questions on direct messages. Sometimes it takes me some time, but I plan to do that over time.
No problem.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So thanks a lot again, Natalia, for joining us, and wish to see you again in future on the show, and would love to actually have you again on this show.
Okay, thank you, Santosh. Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone joining. Thank you. And just to let you know, next week we don't have any episode. I'm on vacation finally after like 10-11 months. Finally a vacation, so I won't be available, and then we'll be back in November with some new episodes. And that's it for today. So see you. Bye bye, everyone.
Enjoy. Bye bye.